Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Destinations with Doni. I'm so excited for our guest today, Deneen Garrett. I had the pleasure of being featured on her podcast, An Intimate Conversation with Women of Color, and she's very passionate about really, I don't want to say extolling the virtues, but really giving voice to women of color because we're just fabulous. That's
Right there, put it out. We are that.
So Deneen has committed herself to making this a thing and making sure that these voices are heard and putting them out there. So I wanted to talk to her about that today and find out what motivated her to get started and why this mission is so important. So hello, Deneen, how are you?
Hello, Donnie. So good to see you again. And yes, thank you for being on my podcast. Donnie actually is closing out season 3 for me, and I really enjoyed our conversation and was so humbled when she asked for me to come on her show and talk about this thing that I'm doing that I've dedicated myself to.
That is wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. So tell us a little bit about your background, Deneen, and
Yeah.
how that feeds into why you wanted to do this.
Yeah, so I'm going to take you on a short journey. So in 2006, I made a decision to move to Las Vegas. That move did not happen until 2009. But prior, I prayed to learn what my purpose and passion was. So after getting to Las Vegas, I got very involved with our employee resource groups. Our volunteer organization. I attended our employee resource group conference, and that's when the light bulbs went off. I'm like, I want a career in this. So I wanted a career either in DNI or what became community engagement. So for the next 4 years, I was doing the work. I was leading, our employee resource groups. I was, just getting the word out, getting people activated and involved and excited about doing that work, that volunteer work, that DNI work. Then I moved back to and letting the people in DNI know what I was passionate about and checking in. Hey, this is what I'm doing. So building those relationships and sustaining those relationships because that's key. Moved back to Detroit. 3 years later, they opened some opportunities in diversity and inclusion, reached out to let me know, and the rest was kind of like history. So in 2000, in yeah, 2016, my company was paying me to passionately pursue my purpose, and that was the DNI work that I was doing. So I led our initiatives. I led the corporate strategy for 3 diverse segments, one being LGBTQ plus. And so I was preparing some peers to do a leadership workshop at an event for LGBTQ plus, and thought afterwards, like, where are the women of color? Like, okay, hold on, what's going on? So I propose a panel for this event for the next year, 2017, an intimate conversation with LGBTQ plus women of color and allies, and to give them a platform to use their voices. So I led that panel, and it had like a different theme each year, but I led that panel for 3 years. And after my third year, which was October 2019, people were like, "What's next for you?" And so I said, "Well, I think I want to do a podcast." So fast forward to 2020, so I'm still thinking about it. It kind of went away and then it kind of came back. And I intended it to be the same format, right? So for the same audience. My first guest happened not to be in a community. So then I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to do it for women of color in general, right? They didn't have to be LGBTQ plus, but definitely open to having them on the show as well. So to answer your question as to why women of color, because we were missing. We were missing in a space. And I, said, hey, let me do something about that. And so, you know how people say, well, why this, why that, and who's going to do it, and and so sometimes the answer is you. You're the one that's supposed to do that thing. So I was the one that was supposed to fill that and provide that platform and that space, and I did. So that's my why.
I love that. Sometimes the answer is you. That is really that's perfect. That's perfect for Destinations with Donnie as well because we cover topics that people are passionate about,
Yeah.
lifestyle and cultural topics, right? And having that in your head, wow, well, I might be the answer to that. Why hasn't someone done this? Why is it this way? Why isn't it this way?
Mhm.
Well, the answer is you. That I mean, that could be a T-shirt.
I, as a matter of fact,
Deanna, write that down.
but I don't know. 'Cause you know what? There might already be one because if I'm there's a song by Phyllis Hyman. The answer is you. So I don't know if you're
Huh?
familiar with Phyllis Hyman, if your audience is or is not. I loved her. I don't know if we would describe her as an R&B jazz singer,
Okay.
but
Okay.
definitely was a brilliant artist. And there's one song for the answer is you. You know, I love that song. But yeah, the answer is you often, right? If something is nudging you to, then it's probably for you to go ahead and do it. So now, so again on this journey, so it's 2020, and I was hemming and hawing about, okay, should I do it? I was like, I was fearful of something. And I had a conversation with my coach who said, you know what, you and I can deliver the same message to the same people, but it would only resonate coming from you. And I'm like, okay. And then I was reading Brene Brown's book. I think it was, God, I can't even think of the name of it right now, but
Was
the
it Dare Greatly, that one,
I
or a
think it
different one?
was. It may have
Okay.
been.
Okay.
So the first chapter, and she has like a quote before her chapters, and it has something about being vulnerable. And I'm like, aha, that's it. I had a fear of being vulnerable. And so the very next day was Good Friday, and I just Nike'd it and did it and launched my podcast. And so I'm wearing a shirt, as Donnie mentioned, an intimate conversation with women of color. And here's the thing that's beautiful about it. And when you're operating in your gifts, I committed during that podcast, it was just a short one to intro it. And I said, hey, I'm going to do an episode every month. And I actually did an episode every week for like 2 years. And I interview guests, right? So it's interviewing guests. So that just let me know I was supposed to do it, right? And to continue forward with it. And so, um, end of December of 2020, my leadership came to me and said, hey, we're moving you to the talent development side. So now I'm back to work, right? So before I told you I learned my purpose and passion through work, I created this panel through work, which ended up being podcast. So from panel to podcast, I say that. And so now again, back in the workspace, and they said, hey, we're going to move you over to talent development to lead the Women of Color Development Program. So it's like, again, I'm obviously operating in my gifts because this thing that I was, so passionate about that was a work thing, then it became, outside of work, and now it's back to work again. So I did that for a year and a half. And along that journey, I made the decision to retire. And so said that when I retire, which I did in June of this year, I said that I would create a business, Deneen Consults, and that business would be focused on helping other companies and organizations create women of color programs. Also coaching. So I coach women of color, to live a dream lifestyle, which has been my focus for this year, and also
Yes.
speaking. So that's where I'm at now.
Okay. Okay. So wow. So that's great. I mean, and hold on, back to the same. The answer is you. Like that. That's a big deal. And you were the answer, and then you took the next steps because
Yeah,
people could hear that they're their answer, and they might have dreams, as you say, living the dream lifestyle. But to take the action, to take the
yeah.
next step to go toward that, that's a whole different ballgame.
Absolutely. And that's the key. And that's the key in a part that's missing with a lot of people. They don't take that action. And so that's where a coach comes in, right? And that was part of, like what really motivated me to do it, because I had a family member who had retired from education. She's young as well, a young retiree. She, had this and that to say about it, and was, finally retiring. So I just knew she was going to pursue her passion. And next thing I know, she was back in the education field. And I'm like, wait. And not only was she back, but she had the same and similar complaints. And so that made me sad. And it made me really motivated to help women to live that dream lifestyle now. Like, don't wait until any particular time. And you don't have to leave your workplace. I do want to make that clear. You don't have to retire, you don't have to quit, but you definitely want to start focusing on doing those things that you love. What gives you joy? Travel gives me joy. Travel, travel,
Right,
travel.
right, right.
I love it.
Well, sometimes what's interesting about that, when you really figure out what you want to do and where you want to be, the answer that you want to give to the world, right, which may be you, you might find that the environment that you're marinating in doesn't give positivity to that answer, right?
Correct.
So I know for me, I've had that happen where I didn't want to leave a position I was very passionate about. And over time, literally, I was just falling apart.
Mm,
And it's like, wait, what's happening? And it wasn't until I actually was out of that situation that I realized how dire it was, not only for my mental health, but physical, et cetera, et cetera. And people around me noticed before I noticed. And they didn't necessarily speak to that because they couldn't see exactly what was the problem, but they would say, what's going on with you? Like, there's
yeah,
something, you're not the same when you're doing X, Y, and Z. And so taking that action, doing something that could be really scary for people, like leaving a position or whatever it is, leaving a relationship, doing something different than you expected to do to truly live that dream life. Wow, that takes you to the next level.
absolutely. And those are signs. So it's a good thing that people did say something to you because, and that's what it takes sometimes. It takes for people just general nudges, right? Help us to make some moves. And then sometimes the situations, the environment that we're in, they can make changes as well. Start taking things away, start changing the game on you. And it's like, wait a minute, this is not what I signed up for. And so those are
Right.
all signs,
Yes.
right? You forward, and it's a good thing, right? It's a great thing because
Yes.
sometimes people know when it's other stuff they're supposed to do. They know that. They know
Yeah.
that something else that they want to do. They may have said, you know what, I want to do this, I want to do that, but they're comfortable where they are, so they don't.
Yes.
Right? And,
Yes.
and that's fine. Whatever your reasons are, it's fine. However, when you start experiencing like what you experience, when things start to be taken away, etc., you got to like stop and say, wait a minute, let me reflect, let me reassess, and might be time to make that move, whatever that move is. And again, you don't have to leave, but start putting in the work to have and do what you want.
Right, right, right. And just like the answer might be you, sometimes the problem might be you, right?
Right.
I mean,
That part.
right? The situation may not have been your fault,
Right.
but there's a time where you have to make the decision to make a change for those around you and for yourself. And that
Absolutely.
just elevates everybody, right?
Oh, I mean, that is 100, and it's funny, and I'm laughing because like on social media, LinkedIn, different people are posting about different things, but for the most part, the common theme in the thread is you. You gotta,
Yeah.
you,
Yep,
you,
you got to do it.
you gotta do
You
it.
know, and I always talk about that. It's all about execution. It doesn't matter. You talk to people who say, "Oh, I should have been a millionaire by now. I had that idea." They see something. I had that idea 10 years ago, 20 years ago, whatever. But what did you do about it, right? It's that
Mhm.
action piece we're talking about. And there's so much that happens in between having the idea,
Right.
executing it, and being successful at it. So much, right? So the problem, as you say, the problem, the answer, all of it, it's you. It comes back to you.
Back to you.
So, what are next steps for you as we wrap up? This has been great. This is like you're giving
Thank
me like
you. Yeah, you know what? I'm really excited at. So I happen to be in the speaking season. Last month I was able to debut as Deneen Consult. So that's my business. So I did my first speaking as Deneen Consults. I've done a couple podcast interviews as Deneen Consults. In October, later in this month, I'm actually going back to Philadelphia. So if you remember, that's the first panel. So I'm going back to Philadelphia, and it's for a podcast event. I actually was going to do a panel there. However, one of my persons is not able to attend, so now it's more of a chat. Right? It's really an intimate conversation on this podcast expo platform. So I am doing that conversation. Thank you. I'm doing that conversation at Afros and Audio in Philadelphia. So again, for me, it's like a full circle because Philly is where I did that first panel. which launched me into the podcast. And now I'm actually doing the podcast events. So I'm excited about all of that. And then, of course, travel in there.
We got okay. We can't just slip that in. Tell us where you're going. Where are you going?
So, so actually, Tuesday I'm headed back to LA, and I say back because I was just in LA last week. But I'm headed back to LA for a pit stop, and then I'm going to Cabo for a few days. And then when I get back, then it's the event, the Philadelphia, the speaking opportunity. And a friend of mine asked me to take this Amtrak trip. And I don't know if you all are familiar, have heard of the Zephyr line, but it
Yes.
Chicago to like San Francisco, Emeryville, but San Francisco. And
Oh,
I've been looking at that for a minute. So when she said, "Hey, you want to do this?" I'm like, "Yeah." So I'm like, I can do it between these out, like red from
yes.
5 RBs. My office hours are, but my traveling schedule availability is this to this. And so I'm waiting for her to confirm it. So that may be another thing that I'm doing, which will
Oh, I'm
be.
a little jealous of that. I've been like you. I've been looking at that for a long time. I would love to see. You have to tell me once you do it. You have to tell me how it goes, what it's
I
like.
will absolutely do that.
That is fantastic. We might just have to have you come on just to talk about that because because I want to know.
Yes, yes. And then the thing is with us, we're going straight. Like we're just gonna be on the train straight. Like we're not getting off stopping. And so
Yeah.
I'm like, well, we can always bring a cooler with sandwiches and different stuff like that. So we'll see. It's gonna be an adventure within an adventure.
Wow. That is wonderful. Well, thank you so much. Where can people find you?
Yeah, so DeneenConsults.com is my the website for my business. DeneenLGarrett.com is where you can find like lifestyle, like different things I'm doing, as well as the podcast. And then on LinkedIn, I'm big and huge on LinkedIn.
Oh, shoot. Well, you know what? I'm about to dip into LinkedIn because I really
Yeah,
love LinkedIn and I don't experience it as much as I should. So I look forward to connecting there. And please, audience, connect with Deneen. It's been a pleasure to have you on. Thank you so much.
thank you for having me. Have a great
All right.
weekend.
You too. Thanks, Deneen.
You're
We'll see you soon.